Classic Restos is proudly brought to you by Shannons, where you can sign up to be a member of the Shannons Club, your local Holden certified service centre, Pace Farm the enjoyable egg, and Heron Forbes Machinery House, where you can buy online.
G'day and welcome to the show. Today it's a story of a guy, a legend truck driver, a man and his classic truck. In this week's Classic Restos, on the road. On a property in regional New South Wales resides a guy whose passion for the trucking fraternity will never fade. Meet Brian Webb, or affectionately known as Webby. And Webby can't wait to see me. It's locked. You there, Webby? Brian was born in Enfield in 1947. Brian left school at the age of 15 when he first got involved in trucks, driving an old Austin tabletop. Next he moved to Melbourne to learn a trade in wool classing. Brian moved back to country New South Wales, working to buy sheepskins around the district, driving a Dodge 400 petrol engine V8. Webby was 21 when he got a job driving a Diamond T agitator which had little or no brakes. How often have we heard that? From there, he drove a Dodge 784T with a 361 V8 petrol engine, carting for the DMR by day and slipping down to Port Kembla for a load of super at night. In 1971, Brian and three mates headed to northwestern Australia to work for the Americans, building the Panawanica rail line. Webby was then driving B-model tippers. After 12 months, he returned to Goulburn, New South Wales and bought his first truck, a B61 Mac, and a flat-top trailer that he carried sheepskins and general freight, local and interstate. Two of the most memorable times for Brian was driving a road train of crushing machinery from Sydney to Broome, towing two 60-foot extendables, carting pipes to Moomba. In 1988, he drove for Curly Sutherland, a W model Kenworth with a 400 Cummins, then off to subcontracting for McPhee Transport, later becoming TNT, on the Sydney to Melbourne run. And that is just some. Since that time, Brian has driven more trucks and worked for many companies. These days, although semi-retired, Brian is still involved in Nat Road and is the president of Convoy for Kids Goulburn. Webby has always had an immediate impact on everyone that he meets on the road over the years. He loves his farming, his family, and catching up with his mates for a beer.
It was a great surprise to me when I got inducted into the Hall of Fame in Alice Springs, the National Hall of Fame. My son Matt and my nephew Darren and my former wife had a lot to do with all the information that went on to get me there. I knew nothing about it. It was a great surprise to me. We were sitting at the induction service and my name got called out and nearly fell over. I love that museum out there. The first time I saw that was in 1997. And I was just on a trip out there with a mate of mine, Dennis McGovern, and his wife, and Sue, my wife. We had a good look about, and there weren't many trucks restored in those days. The Kenworth Hall of Fame wasn't built or anything like that. And the progress they've made since then has been nothing short of phenomenal. Well, when I started out in trucks, I come off a farm. I was brought up on a sheep property at Braidwood. My grandmother and Mum were having a talk one day, and Mum said, "I don't know why Brian's so mad about trucks." And Grandma said, because Mum said there's no carriers in the family. And Grandma said, "Oh yeah, there were." She said one of his ancestors was the first person to pull 3 tonne over the Clyde Mountain. So it turns out, see, my ancestors were teamsters. And they used to carry the goods from the steamboat at Nelligan up over the Clyde Mountain to Braidwood and then take the wool and the produce back down. That's how they used to do it. My old great-great-grandfather, who was a convict, he became a teamster. when he came out here, and he worked with Major Mitchell, the Surveyor General. He worked with him as a teamster. So the carrying game goes back in our family all those years. But Dad and my uncle and all them were brought up on the property at Braeburn. There was no trucks there. A tractor I got sitting there that I've restored. It's the first vehicle I drove when I was a kid. And from then on, when I left school, all I wanted to do was drive a truck. I told Mum when I turned 21, couldn't wait to turn 21 so I could get my semi-licence to go interstate. I first started off doing a lot of local work till I got the heavier trucks. By the time I was 21, I was driving a concrete truck, then a tipper. We used to cart a lot of super out of Port Kembla, worked on the DMR on a big job out there at Yarra where that big cutting is, south of Goulburn. Well, then I went to West Australia with 3 mates, went up into Pilbara. I worked over there for 12 months, and when I came home I bought my first truck, a B-model Mack, and started doing interstate carrying mostly sheepskins and hides and local produce from around here. Then I bought an Acco with a 555 Cummins in it after that, and I did all sorts of work with it. I used to go to North Queensland with it and all over the place. And then my kids were born, and I wasn't real keen on running interstate anymore, and Len McIntyre offered me a job driving a cab over Kenworth with a cement tanker, bulk cement tanker, doing 2 a day from Berrima to Canberra. And I did that for 8 years. At the end of that time I had an accident down near Griffith and rolled a truck over and knocked myself about pretty bad. Then after I got right, managed the concrete plant for Pioneer at Marulan for a while they were doing the bypass down there. And then I started getting back into the trucks gradually. And after that, worked for a few different mobs around here, including Linfox and a few others. Then I went and luckily I got a break and was working for Ken Sutherland. They called him Curly. He come from Cootamundra. And I used to do a bit of driving for Curly at McPhee Transport. And anyway, then he told me he was going to sell out, and he gave me first option, so I bought him out, and 33 and a half years later we're still there. The conditions in the outback in those days were pretty primitive. We were carting pipe up to Moomba in 1982 when the big drought was on. We were dragging 100 odd tonne gross, 120 tonne, 2 extendable trailers, 2 60-footers with pipe up the Streslecki track. And it was an absolute goat track at the time, and it used to take us 12 hours to do 400 kilometres. And but we had to look after our gear because it wasn't heavy enough to be towing that sort of weight. 365 horsepower, 1,200 pound gearbox, and then SP40 diffs. But we did it without busting anything too badly. But anyway, and Berrima Bob, who was a great mate of mine, he and I did a lot of that work together. We worked like that. And we used to cart steel down to Barry Beach when they were building the oil rigs out in Bass Strait. Did a lot of work like that in those days. Even prior to that, Bob and I used to cart hay from 1970. We used to go carting hay and carting super and all that sort of stuff. So we went back a long way, the two of us. I remember my 35th birthday at Copley when we were doing that gas pipe job, and they had a great big old square piece of cake about that thick with a great big old candle in it, and that was my 35th birthday cake. I'll never forget that. Yeah, at the shop in Copley. But they were good fun days. Yeah, well, the trucking industry to me is a passion. I've absolutely made a career out of it all my life. I don't do any driving now, but we're still in the business. And it's a passion to me. It's a second nature. I've met so many good mates in the trucking game, and unfortunately there's a lot of them not with us anymore. And not only me, but a lot of the old mates that I used to work with. They were dead set, dyed-in-the-wool truckies, and that meant a lot to be a truckie, and it did to me too. And you know, we used to have meetings at the time when John McPhee was alive, and he used to say, "I can't believe the passion that you fellas have got for the game." And I said, well, something before we came here just doing line haul, you had to unload and load the trucks yourself and tie the freight on and look after the freight and everything. So it was all part of the job. It wasn't just driving a truck, it was looking after it and also maintaining the truck and fixing tyres on the side of the road of a night time, all that sort of stuff. Yep, dog and chain work and all that sort of thing. Yeah, well, the camaraderie on the road was unbelievable. Like if there was a fella broken down, someone to pull up, whether you knew him or not. You saw a set of four-ways going out the middle of nowhere, you pulled up, and then someone else would come along and pull up and get a hand. By the time you finished, if you only changed a tyre, one bloke would grab the spares, one bloke would get the jack, one bloke would do the wheel nuts, and it wouldn't take you long at all to do a job like that, That's the sort of thing that people used to do. I'm 74 years of age now, and luckily I've lived this long. I don't know why God let me live this long, and a lot of my mates are gone, and a lot younger than me. I've survived the industry and had a good time in the industry and loved every bit of it.
Like Dad, I've always been a Ford man. The Falcon Squire wagon was unloved in 1964, but turns heads today. The Americans call them woodies, but the panelling, it's just fiberglass and plastic. But it's a passion that Shannons understands, which is why my Fords are insured with Shannons. And now, so's the home.
Call Shannons on 13 46 46. Shannons, insurance for motoring enthusiasts.
When it comes to cars, there are some brands that will remain with us forever, no matter what. The Holden was always Australia's own car, held high in the hearts of many. Those lines, that chrome, the stories around them, and the people that owned them. From the classic through to the final, you can still trust in genuine Holden and AC Delco parts, available through the Holden Certified Service Network. Welcome back. Time now for a tractor on today's show. How are you, Brian?
Not bad, thanks, Fletch. How are you today?
Good, mate. Good. Thanks for having us here. This is a wonderful spot you've got here.
Yeah, it's lovely. We love it out here. Nice and peaceful.
What a view when you look out that door there. You just would never tire of that.
No. Like I said to you earlier, we'll have to drag me out of your feet first. I'm not leaving.
I don't blame you. Absolutely. Now, Brian, this tractor here, it's quite significant to you. It means a lot. Share the story.
The tractor was the first vehicle I ever drove when I was a kid. My uncle and my dad owned a property called Brooklyn at Braidwood, which was their father's before them. And this tractor worked on that place right through from 1956 when they bought it second hand from Heats Motor Sales in Goulburn. And it subsequently got knocked about pretty bad. And then when the old fellas passed away and one thing and another, I got it back here in Goulburn, and it was in a pretty bad state of repair. And I decided I'd do it up in their memory, and I've done that and spent quite a lot of money on it. And it's got to stay in the family. My grandson Jack will have it after I'm gone, and hopefully forever it'll stay in our family.
Just the years, you wind back the clock and learning to drive on the vehicle, and here it is here next to you like this. It's just incredible. The design of these machines, it's always amazed me as well, where the bell housing is it's part of, it's the whole it's the whole structure of the entire tractor, isn't it?
Right. These tractors were a state of the art in their time. They couldn't get them out here till about 1948 because they had to satisfy the UK market first. They're built by the Standard Motor Company in Coventry, England, and the standard motor that's in them is the same motor they put in Vanguard motor cars back in those days. And these were the first tractor to come to Australia that had a 3-point linkage on the back to lift up and down. Yeah, and anyway, they were in such great demand that just about all the soldier settlers finished up getting them, and the town of Wentworth over there where the Murray and the Darling join is known as the town that the Fergie saved. It had the levee banks and all that around the place were built by the Fergies to stop the big flood in 1956. Yep. And there's one up on a pole down there, and they're in all the pubs that got them done up like this, and they're beaut.
It's like the Ferguson tractor on Australian farms. It was almost like the Model T Ford, wasn't it?
Yep, it was. It was an icon. The Fergie was an icon, and that's why they're so valuable and well worth doing up and keeping like this. Yeah, they are.
What's the story of the old tractor behind us?
That belonged to Detective Sergeant Jack Williams, and when Jack retired, he had a property out at Garunda out the other side of Goulburn here. Yeah. When he retired and cashed everything up, he had a clearing sale, and I bought that old tractor there at a clearance sale because I've got a fair few implements to go on it. I'm not going to put them on this tractor because it'll never work again. But that one of Jack's there, we can run it around and do a few little jobs. It's got a saw on it at the moment.
That saw blade, that saw blade, that's like a horrible nightmare.
It is.
Looking at that.
That's right.
I think a lot of guys back in the day, their nickname must have been Lefty.
That's right. They lost a few fingers here and there on them. Yeah.
At this stage of life, you look back at all the machines that you've operated, the trucks that you've driven, tractors. Are you shocked by what you can think of and how many devices that you have operated over all these years?
Oh, not about shocked, but I'm very bloody proud of the fact that I've driven a lot of trucks. I started off driving little Austin trucks when I was 15 for my boss, and he used to leave me at the abattoirs up here in Goulburn with an 8-ton truck, and I'd be going around through the skin sheds loading all the skins, and he'd go to town and get on the grog. And I'd tarp it up, and when he come back, we'd go back to Braidwood, things like that. And we used to go up to the abattoirs in the skit, they used to call it a slaughterhouse in Braidwood, and pick up sheepskins up there and stuff like that. Did all that sort of stuff.
Brian, looking at the skins overloaded on those trucks, would it be safe to say that they might have just been a tad overloaded?
No, they weren't. They're over height, but they weren't overweight by any means. No, it was just lamb skins, long wool, and there was about 3,000. We used to load them all by hand. That photo you saw, there's over 3,000 skins on that load. But that was a regular occurrence. I used to take a couple of loads a week to Melbourne like that, or 3 or 4 nights, something like that.
How cool are these stories? You could honestly sit around and talk to this guy all day. Now stay in your favourite chair, because after the break we're going to be back with Brian with a very, very nice Mack restoration that is well and truly underway.
Yes, it is. Thanks to my son Matt. He'll tell you more about that when you get to talk to me about it. Between us we've done a fair bit, but Matt's doing all the work on it, and I'm just the gopher. I pick up the bits and pieces, Spanish.
There you go. Back with more after the network's gone and sold some stuff.
I spend a lot of time out here. The RT Charger's the real deal. An E49. Remember A-Charger? I've always got projects on the go, so Shannon's laid-up cover helps protect my restorations. I'm Mopar through and through. It's a passion Shannon's understands. I wouldn't insure my cars and bikes with anyone else.
Shannon's, insurance for motoring enthusiasts. Call 13 46 46 for a quote.
They may not be making the classic Holden anymore, but the legacy lives on. You can still have a Holden certified service using genuine Holden and AC Delco quality parts at over 180 centres across Australia. Go to holden.com.au to find your nearest centre. Book your Holden in, maintain the pride.
Got a classic? Got to be with Shannon's. Why not pick up the phone and give Shannon's a call for a quote and a chat on 134646. And don't forget too that the Shannon's Club awaits you with their own in-house productions such as Shannon's Club TV, Legends of Motorsport, Driven, End of an Era. You can catch classic restos there as well, along with a whole host of other really cool stuff as Australia's largest automotive online hub. For more information, visit shannons.com.au. Welcome back. How cool is it when father and son get to do a project together? But not just any old project. How about this? A glorious 1967 Flintstone Mack. And Brian's son Matt is here to tell us a little more.
So here we have a 1967 model Flintstone Mack. Originally it was a May Nicholas truck. We think it's a highway truck from the running gear that was in it. It was powered by a 711 Mack engine. We've repowered it with a 237. It's got a 5x4 quad box, Mack quad box. They're synonymous for quad box, and that was one of the reasons for buying it. Dad wanted to teach us how to use a quad box. We ended up buying it out at Marul. Offered a cocky out there. It was sitting in his paddock for a fair while. Marul's out near West Wyalong. The truck ran around Dubbo for a few years, but I can't find anyone at this point to tell me where in Dubbo it came from. When we first got it, it was pretty rough condition. It'd been painted a few times, so layers of paint, upon paint. So we decided to sandblast the whole thing down and start from ground up. We replaced the running gear in the back. So we're waiting for the glass to turn up. It should be here next week. So once the glass turns up, we can sit the cab on, and then I can start fitting the cab out. Once the cab's on, it should be hopefully a quick fix from there in. Dad, in my eyes, was one of the best. He taught me everything I know. I've been with a lot of blokes in trucks before, and I used to look up to them guys. I did, and I thought that's what I wanted to do, that's where I was going. They were just the duck's guts. Maybe not heroes, but they were up there, you know, the blokes that I aspired to be. I always wanted to be a truck driver. Mum was going to kill me, but I was always going to be a truck driver. It was just something I wanted to do. I got to start driving early, probably wasn't supposed to. Well, obviously wasn't supposed to, but I got to start driving at a fairly young age and loved it. It's going to be my tribute to Dad in the end, so I've got an idea in my head that he hasn't seen yet, and he'll see at the end. So it's going to be pretty much like the first Kenworth that he bought a few years ago in the 90s. It'll be a similar colour scheme to that. Yeah, so hopefully he'll be impressed with the finished product anyway. So.
Brian, how does it feel to stand in front of this restored Mack?
Pretty good, mate. Yeah, Matt's done a wonderful job on it for the work he's doing. He's very, very particular about it, and everything's going together great. He puts so much time and effort into it, and I just hope I'm alive. Like I said to you earlier, I hope I'm still alive to see it finished.
You will be, mate. You're not going anywhere just yet. You got too much stuff you haven't finished yet, Brian.
Exactly. That's right. I got all this stuff to finish.
I think it's lovely what Matt said earlier too. I mean, you are his idol. He thinks the world of you, and to be able to restore a truck in your tribute, I just think that's a beautiful thing. It doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, well, that's right. I hope he thinks, and I think he does, regard it in the same way as I regard that little Ferguson tractor that I did up in memory of my uncle and my dad. Yeah. And he's doing the same thing, and we've done this up here, and that'll be a tribute to us and to Matt and myself and the family, and I'm hoping it'll stay in our family forever. And like he said, the reason we bought a Mack with a quad box in it was because I used to drive them years ago, and the boys all wanted to know how we ever did this changing gears with 2 sticks. And I said, well, we got an old Mack one day, we'll show you.
It's a work of art. It's a work of art, really is. But not only that, with the way the truck's being restored, how mighty is this? I mean, engine, driveline, chassis, full respray, suspension. The cab looks sensational. It's talk about a brand new truck. It's probably going to be better than when it was new.
Oh, absolutely better than when it was new, yeah, my word. It's been sandblasted and painted and undercoated and everything, and rubbed back, and it's a magnificent job the way it's been finished, really is. You
want to know another nice thing too?
What's that?
The fact that it's being restored to be put into retirement. It's done its hard years, and now it is to be appreciated, and we'd all like to think that in 100 years from now it's still going to look as good.
Oh yeah, I hope so. It'll only ever just go to truck shows and stuff like that, and in the Hall and the Hume and things like that, hopefully, you know, it'll be wonderful, yeah.
It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Brian. And again, the trucking fraternity, particularly with the classic trucks as well, through Classic Restos, to try and give some accolades wherever I possibly can. Now, a name of a guy, Bruce Gunter. Now, Bruce, he's been mentioned on Classic Restos many times before, standing tall for the trucking fraternity as well. And there's a whole heap of other characters too that have been on Classic Restos in the past as well. It is an incredible fraternity, what you guys stand for, not only what you stand for now, but the sweat that you've dropped in the cabs all those decades ago, and the hard yards and the miles, the Ks that you guys have put in to keep this country going, mate.
Yeah, thanks, Fletch. That's probably put in a nutshell too. That's the way we used to do it, work pretty hard at our industry. Like I said earlier, we loved our game. Fellas in my era just loved it. We're passionate about the industry and proud to be able to put something back into it like this and restore one of those beautiful old trucks. It's a pleasure to be able to do it. I can't do too much now. Matt's doing all the hard yakka, and I'm just the gopher. I pick up the spanners for him in bits and pieces. But yeah, it's good. Put a few dollars into it.
That's probably not a bad position to be in, Brian. And I'll tell you what we're going to do. When the truck's on the road, we'll come back and we'll do an update segment on the truck running. And all going to plan, we'll have you behind the wheel and we'll get you to feature again on Classic Restos. How's that sound?
Sounds good. I'll have to learn to drive a quad box again now, though.
Been a pleasure, Brian. Thank you.
Thanks, Fletch. Good on you, mate. Thanks very much.
Well, I hope you've really enjoyed this week's episode of Classic Restos. Just a little bit about the man, Brian Webb, or known as Webby, working in conjunction with his son Matt, restoring this wonderful 1967 Flintstone Mac. I hope you enjoyed it. Until next week, no matter where you're watching Classic Restos from, please ride and drive safe. I'm Fletch, and I thank you very much for watching. You can like and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/ClassicRestosTV and watch catch-up episodes at shannons.com.au. Classic Restos is proudly brought to you by Shannons, where you can sign up to be a member of the Shannons Club, your local Holden certified service centre, Pace Farm the enjoyable egg, and Heron Forbes Machinery House, where you can buy online.